Time to get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Daniel Pham, the Public Affairs Manager at the American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. So one of our goals is to inform our members of funding opportunities and resources that they can tap into. Federal science agencies like the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation provide a bulk of the resources to scientists, but not many know about the resources from the Department of Energy's Office of Science. So today we're very excited to host Dr. Todd Anderson, the DOE's Office of Science's Biological Systems Science Division Director within the Office of Biological and Environmental Research. So Dr. Anderson will be giving a 30-minute overview of the resources and funding opportunities that are of interest to biochemists and molecular biologists, followed by a Q&A session for about 15 to 20 minutes. So please prepare your questions, and you can ask them in the Q&A box on your screen. Make sure they're not too specific to your own personal research so that they can apply to other participants. And also, if you cannot hear well, you can call into our phone conference line at 1-800-768-2983, and the passcode is 283-6625#. You can find that number in the chat box. And if you have any other issues, you can also just email or directly chat to me, the ASBMB web conferencing person. So also be sure to mute your lines to eliminate any background noise. And the webinar is also recorded and will be sent out available for later viewing. So that being said, I will turn it over to Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, Daniel. I'd like to thank the organizers of this webinar for the opportunity to present today. If I was a betting person, I would bet, as Daniel mentioned, that many of the ASBMB members may not be too familiar with the Department of Energy's basic science programs and may be much less familiar with DOE's Office of Biological and Environmental Research. So what I've prepared today is kind of an introductory overview of our division's portfolio, which I think may be of interest to ASBMB members. So I'll go in and talk a little bit about our current portfolio, the different aspects of the portfolio, some of the user facilities and capabilities that are available not only to DOE researchers, but the research community in general. And then I'll end the talk on some of the funding opportunity announcements that we have on the street right now. In fact, 2 were posted just this Monday. So as a brief introduction, for those that are unfamiliar with the DOE's Office of Science, we are a basic research entity within the Department of Energy. The DOE Office of Science is comprised of 6 major program offices, and you can see by the 6 boxes in this particular organizational plot that much of the basic research that we fund is in the area of physics and chemistry and computation. And in fact, DOE's Office of Science is the major supporter of the physical and chemical sciences in the country right now. But we also have a very strong element in biology, and much of that occurs in the Office of Biological and Environmental Research. And that's the office that I'm representing today. Our associate director is Charlene Weatherwax, and the office is split into 2 divisions. One led by my colleague, Gary Giernard, who's the director of the Climate and Environmental Sciences Division. And this is where DOE's major efforts in global climate modeling and environmental process research is carried out. We also, the Climate and Environmental Sciences Division also is the steward for the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory located at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which is a national scientific user facility available to all funded researchers. In the Biological Systems Sciences Division, I have the privilege of directing this division of BER. We're the home of the Genomic Sciences program. We also have elements in biotechnology development for bioimaging development, multimodal bioimaging development. And many of you may be familiar with the Joint Genome Institute. We are the administrators of the Joint Genome Institute, also a DOE National Scientific User Facility available to all funded researchers, not just DOE researchers. So what I'd like to do is just go through the Biological System Sciences Division portfolio a little bit, go into a little bit more detail about the Genomic Sciences program in particular, which is our major basic research funding element in the portfolio. But first off, let me just mention that our overarching goal within the Biological Systems Sciences Division is to provide DOE with the necessary fundamental science to understand, predict, manipulate, and design biological processes that underpin innovations for bioenergy and bioproduct production, and to enhance the understanding of natural environmental processes of relevance to DOE. We are heavily into bioenergy research and environmental process research. We are a genome-centric program, as you would indicate by looking at the inclusion of JGI in our portfolio. So we're very much interested in gaining a more basic understanding of the biology of plants and microbes for bioenergy relevant purposes. There's 5 objectives to the division's strategic plan. I won't read those verbatim, but suffice it to say that we have major programmatic research areas in the area of plant and microbial bioenergy research, biosystems design and synthetic biology, environmental microbiome science. Those are the 3 main basic research elements within the portfolio, and then coupled with that portfolio, we also bring on enabling capabilities into the program, and I mentioned one already in the area of bioimaging technology development. And then user facility integration. We're looking at ways of, DOE is home to several different types of scientific user facilities. We manage one, the Joint Genome Institute. Our colleagues in our Climate Environmental Sciences Division manage another DOE user facility, the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory. And within BER and the Biological Systems Sciences Division in particular, we're looking at ways to leverage those user facilities in a little more multidisciplinary way. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we're facilitating integrative access to more than one DOE user facilities with one user proposal. So if you go on to taking a closer look at the portfolio, overall we are about a $250 million entity. 2/3 of that money is in the Genomic Sciences program, which is where the bulk of our basic research is funded. The Genomic Sciences program has 7 major elements. Those major elements are the subject of funding opportunity announcements that recur on a 1 to 3 to 5 year basis, depending on the program. And this is where the bulk of the research is conducted within our programs. We complement the research going on in the Genomic Sciences program with enabling capabilities and technology development, such as our biomolecular characterization and imaging science portfolio, which has our bioimaging technology development component. And then, of course, our user facilities and infrastructure are also part of this portfolio. The items that I have starred with a red asterisk, these are areas where we have funding opportunity announcements on the street right now. 2 of these just posted on Monday, one in the area of plant biology research, the other one in the area of environmental microbiome research. Our bioimaging FOA has been out a couple of months, but the 2 others just posted on Monday. So if you want to take a look at those, if something sings to you in this presentation and you want to take a look at those FOAs, they are available, and I'll guide you to where those FOAs can be found later in the presentation. What I'd like to do is just go through the individual elements in just a little bit more detail to give you a flavor of the kind of research that we fund and where you can find resources to look over the projects that we fund and get an even more detailed look at the kind of science that we support. One of the major and perhaps the highest profile element within the Genomic Sciences program right now are the DOE Bioenergy Research Centers. There's 4 of these. These are huge projects. They're funded at $25 million a year each. They're multi-institutional, hundreds of researchers working in the area of bioenergy research. And each of these 4 centers are all oriented towards the same overall goal, and that's how do we convert sustainable biomass to a range of fuels and chemicals to replace what we currently get from petroleum. Looking at ways of cost-effectively breaking down biomass, converting it into its components, and then looking at ways of converting those components to the fuels and chemicals that we currently get from petroleum. These 4 centers, one is located at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. That's the Center for Bioenergy Innovation, or CBI. Another is led by the University of Wisconsin with a strong partnership from Michigan State University. That's the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center. The Joint Bioenergy Institute is led by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and our newest Bioenergy Research Center is the Center for Advanced Bioenergy and Bioproducts Innovation, or CABI, led by the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Each of these centers has, they're geared around four major emphases that are looking at some of the basic science bottlenecks that inhibit our ability to convert biomass to a range of biofuels and products. So they're looking at not only details of sustainability research, how do we cultivate bioenergy crops in the environment, but also how do we develop dedicated bioenergy crops, looking at ways of modifying plant material to produce a crop that's more favorable for bioenergy purposes. We're also looking at ways of deconstructing biomass to break down biomass into its individual components. And here a major challenge, of course, is lignin, and how do we break down and make something useful from lignin. That's a major area of emphasis in all four of these centers. And then finally, how, once we've broken down plant biomass into its components, how do we convert those components to the range of fuels and chemicals that we need to replace what we currently get from petroleum. I've listed the websites for each of these centers. They're available to look through. Just as a follow-up to this graph or this slide, I have another slide here that kind of goes into the overall, the high-level view of what each of the centers is doing in each of the four major areas of emphases within our bioenergy portfolio. Where CABI is strong in looking at, has a very strong connection with growers and an agronomic focus. They're also developing the idea of plants, or developing the idea of plants as factories concepts, where plants are being used to produce fuels and chemicals in planta. CBI, or the Center for Bioenergy Innovation at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, has a strong emphasis on modifications to a variety of different bioenergy crops. They have a particular focus on modified switchgrass, which they have several varieties that they've already field tested, and others that they're currently field testing, and developing those dedicated bioenergy crops for a range of fuels and chemicals, for later conversion to a range of fuels and chemicals. At the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Centers, they have a particular emphasis on looking at sustainability research. A component of the program is looking at broad ways on how do we produce dedicated bioenergy crops on a regional basis and from an agricultural perspective. And the Joint Bioenergy Institute at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab has a strong interest in developing metabolic engineering approaches for microorganisms and plants to convert renewable compounds that we get from deconstructed biomass into the fuels and chemicals to replace petroleum. This is just hitting some of the high notes and what each of the four centers are doing in these four areas. To get, again, a little bit more information on what these centers are doing, we do have a brochure that goes into depth on the individual goals for each of the centers and the larger teams that are associated with each of these centers. Now, we're not just about funding enormous projects in the bioenergy space, but also looking for ways to facilitate and broaden what's going on in those larger projects. And as an example here, I have one of the other areas of the Genomic Sciences program is in the area of systems biology for bioenergy. And this is a recurring funding opportunity announcement that's it's targeted at looking at microorganisms with bioenergy relevant traits. And the idea here is to broaden the number of microorganisms that we have under study in the portfolio to complement some of the work that's going on in those larger BRC projects. This is targeted to the academic community. It's meant to facilitate solicit the research, the help of small teams or individual investigators that are looking at a range of different microbes that could be useful from a bioenergy perspective. To get an idea of the kind of projects that we fund in this area, the latest awards are posted at the link provided on this slide. They're grouped in with some bioimaging awards, but I think you can tell the difference between the biofuels and the bioimaging awards if you look at the list of projects in that link. And there's also more information available on websites that I'll mention later in the talk. But the idea here is to have opportunities to facilitate a broader perspective on the microorganisms that we have under study in the program that have biofuel relevant traits. In a similar way, another funding opportunity announcement that comes out on a current recurring basis in the Genomic Science program is an emphasis on plant biology research. This is a long-standing collaborative relationship that we've had with our U.S. Department of Agriculture colleagues in developing a broader range of plants that could be developed into dedicated bioenergy crops. This goes far beyond, say, switchgrass or poplar or sorghum that have a major focus in the bioenergy research centers. This goes and looks at a broader range of plant species that could be developed into bioenergy crops. Again, targeting smaller groups of researchers or single investigators in plant biology research. I mentioned earlier, this is one of the newer FOAs that we have that posted just earlier this week. It's a little bit different of a flavor than what we've funded here in the past. And we currently don't have USDA participating on this latest call. But I think if you're interested in plant biology and basic plant biology in general, you should take a look at the FOA that's on the street right now. To look at some of the other types of plants that we have in the portfolio, see the link in the slide that lists the latest awards in the plant feedstocks area of our portfolio. A little bit further within the Genomic Sciences program, probably one of our more forward-looking elements of the portfolio is in the area of biosystems design. We are a genome-centric program developing not only with, well, for example, JGI is sequencing over 200 terabases of sequence a year of plants and microbes and microbial communities. We are involved in generating an enormous amount of omic information. We'd eventually like to take that information and actually look at ways to design new and favorable traits into plants and microbes for bioenergy relevant purposes. And that's the idea behind the biosystems design element of our portfolio. This is largely a more future-oriented element of our portfolio, looking to develop synthetic biology and systems biology approaches to designing new functions into organisms. We have a particular focus on microbial systems and plant systems from a bioenergy perspective, but you can see how this would underline a larger bioeconomy effort. And we are very much moving in that direction and making better use of the genomic information that we're developing in our programs to actually look at ways of designing new traits into organisms. And so for some of the latest awards that we awarded back in fiscal year 17, a description of those projects are also available on our website. Another aspect of our research is in the area of environmental microbiome science. This was previously named just microbiology or environmental microbiology or microbial ecology, and now we've moved that element of the portfolio into microbiome science to reflect an emphasis on understanding the communication that goes on between microbial communities in an environmental setting. This is probably our longest running element within the Genomic Sciences program, primarily because of our interest in environmental process research. This actually is a nice connection point from our science within the Biological System Science Division and our colleagues in the Climate and Environmental Sciences Division. Here we're looking at taking a genome-enabled approach to understand microbial activity in a variety of different environments, how microbial communities control the cycling of things, of nutrients and carbon in a variety of different environments, also contaminants in the environment. And when I say contaminants, I always have to have the qualifier. We're interested more in the DOE unique contaminants, which means more of the radionuclide contaminants. This also has a discovery element to our portfolio in that when we go to these different environments to try and understand how microbial communities are controlling the flow of materials in the environments, we often find a variety of different organisms that have favorable traits that could be useful elsewhere in the portfolio. So there's a major discovery element in this portion of of our portfolio, the environmental aspect portion. It includes just basic microbial ecology from a wide different environments, but also development of new techniques for detecting microbial activity in the environment. Another aspect of the Genomic Sciences program that's very integrative within our portfolio, this is still a relatively new element in the portfolio, is in the area of sustainability research for bioenergy. And this combines much of our expertise and expertise in microbial ecology with plant biology and field investigations all in one program to look at how plant-microbe interactions can help control or facilitate the growth and yield of bioenergy crops. These are also a recurring funding opportunity. This recurs on a 5-year. This is something that might come up in next year's offerings. but this is very much an integrative portion of our portfolio. Again, it's intended to address the academic community into small teams, something that complements some of our sustainability research that's going on in the bioenergy research centers, to broaden the perspective on sustainability research for bioenergy within our portfolio. And the last element of the Genomic Sciences program is in the area of computational biosciences. And this is something that's cross-cutting across the entire Genomic Sciences portfolio. And one of the newest items that we've brought on into the portfolio in recent years is a capability known as the DOE Systems Biology Knowledge Base. This is an online, open access online system that is basically an online workbench. As I mentioned before, we are a genome-centric program, so for microbes and plants, and we're generating an awful lot of sequence information and an awful lot of omics information. And one of the big challenges is finding ways to work with that data effectively in an experimental format. And what KBase does is it allows researchers to access these very complex and disparate databases and combine them in a way that makes hypothesis generation possible. The KBase system is one of the defining features is what we call the narrative function, where you can actually essentially draw in different databases that are either already connected into KBase or bring your own data onto the site and work with the applications that are resident within KBase, or design your own applications that could go into KBase. Do your analyses within this narrative framework, and then share those analyses reproducibly with somebody else that's on the site, or perhaps a team member or a colleague working in similar areas. The idea here is that many of the databases that are linked within KBase are it's a relational database, so everything is linked. And so if you're performing a very complex analysis within KBase, you can be assured that your colleagues on your team or across the country, or indeed anybody who's online, can reproduce your analyses, or they can see exactly what you have done. They can modify what you have done and send back to you. And it offers an opportunity for more closer collaboration on some of these very intricate and complex genomic analyses. KBase is something that you take a look at. It's available online at kbase.us. And some of the new applications that are coming on are pretty exciting. It's a continually changing process. It's a challenge to keep up with some of the developments in this area of genomics in our programs, but KBase is doing a pretty good effort, I think, at trying and bringing on new applications that could be applicable not only to our research, but the larger research community. So the other areas of the portfolio that I'd like to mention are in the area of biomolecular characterization and imaging science. I mentioned earlier that we have a technology development portion of our portfolio that's interested in looking at developing multimodal bioimaging capabilities. We are, again, a genomics-heavy program. We pose hypotheses about how cells work, both in plants and in microbes, but we'd also like to visualize how processes are occurring within cells. And that's the driving goal for this area of the portfolio, is how can we combine different types of imaging techniques together within a single instrument to help facilitate and ask questions and pose hypotheses about cell metabolism, whether in plants or in microbes. Now, another element of the portfolio in the biomolecular characterization and imaging science portion of our portfolio is that we also facilitate access to the DOE synchrotron light and neutron sources for structural biology and imaging. And I've listed here on this slide some of the resources that we are involved with. All of the light sources have a APS at the National Synchrotron Light Source 2 and an ALS at SLAC. We facilitate access for researchers that are engaged in biological research to access these resources for crystal structure or protein or structural biology or imaging capabilities. These are operated as user facilities and are not just free to DOE researchers, but actually free to other researchers across the country with a funded project. It is governed by a proposal process, so you need to submit a proposal. And if you're new to using these resources, we can facilitate or put you in contact with people at the light sources that could help you develop those proposals, or at least help you understand the capabilities that are available at the light sources or the neutron sources that would be applicable to your science. And we can facilitate that conversation with the funds that we provide to each of these resources for doing just that. We also have some new capabilities coming into the portfolio, new cryo-EM capabilities at SLAC that are funded by NIH. We are facilitating access to those capabilities by providing scoping microscope or screening microscopes prior to researchers putting samples up on the big cryo-EMs. We also have a burgeoning cryo-EM capability coming up at Brookhaven National Lab that's co-funded with the state of New York. So there'll be some new cryo-EM capabilities that we're bringing into the portfolio. And I also want to mention the DOE Joint Genome Institute. This has been a fixture in our program. It's the primary source for genome sequence information and interpretive capabilities and analysis capabilities for microbes and plants and microbial communities for our programs. DOE has been central to the genomic science program for sure, but also has been very instrumental in a lot of our other programs, including colleagues in our other Climate Environmental Sciences division. The DOE Joint Genome Institute is a national scientific user facility. Its primary mechanism for engaging the larger research community is through the community science program, the CSP call. These are our annual calls that come out from JGI to the research community in a variety of different mechanisms, and they solicit plant and microbial community sequencing projects from researchers in the field. And so it's governed by a proposal process. If you are interested in having an organism or a community or a plant species sequenced, you submit a proposal to the CSP call. Those proposals are reviewed not only for scientific but merit, but also relevance to BER research goals. And if accepted, those organisms and samples are sequenced for free, and those sequences can be provided back to you. There's a variety of different topics that come up on an annual basis. I've listed a few here, topics that have come up over the years. The CSP programs are multi-topic, so this would be one set of a previous year's call. I think the new community science program call, it may be out by now, or it will be out shortly, but I don't expect that the topics of this particular CSP call would be too much different than what we see here. One new aspect that I hinted at earlier is this, we're trying to facilitate collaborative activities among our DOE user facilities. And the reason we're doing that is because we're inherently a multidisciplinary program, and we'd like our user facilities to offer multidisciplinary capabilities to our users. And so one of the examples is that between the Joint Genome Institute and the Environmental Molecular Science Laboratory at Pacific Northwest National Lab. They've come up with a process where it's called a FICUS proposal. It's facilities in collaboration for user science. And what it does is allow a user proposal to come in and, if accepted, allows a user to access both facilities with one proposal. And this has been extremely productive over the last 4 or so years in facilitating a very multidisciplinary approach to science in exactly the areas that we think we need, in the areas of biofuel and bioproducts, plant microbe interactions, biogeochemistry, and other emerging topics of relevance to our programs. If you're a PI that is looking at, very interested in using genomic information and pairing that with proteomics information, say genomic information from JGI or proteomics information from IMSL. IMSL also has a wide variety of NMR capabilities and imaging capabilities. By creating a collaborative process where a user can access both facilities at once, it brings an enormous amount of very high-end capabilities available to users that can access both these facilities with that one proposal. It's a very, I think, a productive way to use to be introduced to the DOE user facilities. There's also other collaborative relationships starting up. I mentioned one here on this slide towards the bottom. The Joint Genome Institute is working with the National Energy Research Supercomputing Center at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab for heavy-duty bioinformatics simulations on on high-performance computing at NERSC. This is a relatively new collaborative effort between two user facilities on the Berkeley site. We're also looking at collaborative relationships between JGI and the DOE light sources for looking at expressing proteins and then getting the structures determined at the DOE light sources, or at least facilitating an opportunity for researchers to actually crystallize proteins in preparation for submitting a user proposal to the DOE light sources or the neutron sources. In terms of new funding opportunities, I mentioned earlier that we have two opportunities that posted Monday, one in the area of plant genomics research, another in the area of environmental microbiome science. These are all posted to the grants.gov website under the DOE or Department of Energy Office of Science tab. Take a look at those opportunities if you're so inclined. The bioimaging research FOA is also posted to the grants.gov under the same tab. There are a variety of tabs in grants.gov. You want to be sure you're looking under the Office of Science tab for the Department of Energy. And for our user facilities, our user proposals come out on an annual basis. There's a variety of different mechanisms. At JGI, I've listed an example of the kinds of calls that come out on an annual basis. This is mirrored on the EMSL website. The EMSL facility at Pacific Northwest National Lab also has a set of calls that come out annually for access to that user facility. These can be very, like I said before, very informative. You'll see the collaborative calls for the joint proposals between EMSL and JGI also listed in the latest calls for proposals. So with that, I think I've gone through the major elements of the portfolio, and I hope I've given you a sense of the not only the different types of research that we fund within the division, but also how the different parts fit together. We're not just about funding enormous projects, but also have opportunities for smaller teams and single investigator projects that can fit and complement our larger efforts going on in the portfolio. We have, like I said earlier on, about 2/3 of our budget is in for basic research, either at the labs, the DOE National Labs, or in the academic community. The split is roughly 60 to 65% of our funds going to national laboratory programs, which are team-oriented programs, and the remaining 40 to 35% goes out to the academic community in forms of funding opportunity announcements. We're very focused on the BER research community. We're very focused on fostering research that helps meet our larger mission goals, but then partnering that research with enabling capabilities, with computation, and with genome-based data and new ways to access that genome-based data to help facilitate and accelerate our science. And we hope that we have this. We hope that we have some structure to the overall portfolio where we're converging on solutions to DOE's missions in sustainable bioenergy development, environmental research, and biosystems design. And with that, I think I'll stop and leave you with a couple of other links to our programs. One is the link to our official website on the DOE website, and the bottom link is to the Genomic Sciences program that carries a lot more information about the individual elements of the portfolio and some of our workshop brochures and additional awards brochures for recent awards in the program. And so it's a good resource for folks that maybe aren't too familiar with DOE programs but are looking for more information. And so with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd. So right now we have about 15 to 20 minutes for questions and answers. If you have any questions, please type it into the Q&A box you see in your screen. I have a few questions as well.
Sure.
There's one question from the audience. The first one is, can anyone access KBase? Is it free?
It is. Open access and online, yes.
And I think you just have to make an account, right?
Yeah, you have to. Yes, you have to make an account. But yes, it's free. And any work that you do in KBase, you have your own private workspace. It's only public if you want it to go public.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So another question. So who would we contact if we want to access resources at the large, the centers, like you said, like the APS, or when do we know that proposals are open to access these resources?
So each of the individual light sources runs a separate proposal process, and that's available on the links for the site. If you're specifically looking to access the capabilities that I highlighted today, I would strongly encourage you to contact our program manager for that area of the portfolio. Her name is Dr. Amy Swain, and I can provide that link to the organizers here today and to get that out to people that were interested in those capabilities.
Great, thank you. Another question, what are your funding success rates for awards specific to PIs and independent research labs?
So our funding opportunity announcement success rates average, I'd say, right around 15%.
Okay, so similar to NIH.
Yeah. Now you do have a pre-application process, and we do put a magnifying glass to our pre-application process. So we're we don't want people submitting things that we don't think are in scope for the program. So we do give you some feedback at the pre-app stage. But overall, I think over the last couple of years, we've been averaging about 15% for our success rate for our FOAs.
Thank you. So another question from the audience. You mentioned that some of the grant opportunities cycle around, like systems biology for bioenergy. How often does that FOA come back?
So that one's on a 3-year cycle. This is for the microbial. I think this is for the microbial aspects of the portfolio. Yeah, the systems biology for bioenergy. That was a we just made new awards last year, so it'll be another 2 years before that one comes up. That's on a 3-year cycle.
Okay, thank you. Another question from the audience. Can you explain more about the NERSC high-performance computing? Is it open to academics, or is it just for DOE?
So NERSC is what we call it, the National Energy Research Supercomputing Center at Lawrence Berkeley. It is the primary. So that's a support center for Office of Science programs. So if you are a funded PI in the program, you have that computational capability available to you if you need it, and that's controlled the time. Each of the program offices within the Office of Science is allocated time at NERSC, and we allocate time out to our funded projects for time on NERSC if they need it. And it's handled through a proposal process to NERSC, but the program managers are involved here at DOE. It's not generally available to folks outside of the DOE programs, although if you're working in an area of biological research that could complement existing programs. For example, we often will look at applications that or ideas that come in from PIs that are not currently funded in our programs. If they're working in an area that we think could complement our current efforts, there are some doors open. There is some access available to NERSC, but you have to go through the program manager here in our office, and that program manager for our office is Ramana Madupu, whose name is, I can also supply that name and contact information for those interested in seeing about access to NERSC.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Similarly, along those lines, how would one initiate collaborations with DOE centers and kind of these large institutes that are around the country?
Yeah, so maybe working with the laboratory programs or connecting in with the bioenergy research centers. It comes with a conversation with those research teams. Most of our, actually all of our laboratory programs, I didn't highlight them in this particular talk, but all of them are online, and you can see the links on our larger Genomic Sciences website, links for the individual laboratory programs and the bioenergy research centers. And they're pretty open to discussing scientific concepts. And it's not uncommon if people bring ideas to the national labs or meeting people at a variety of meetings or international meetings. It's not uncommon that people can make connections into the lab programs on a researcher-to-researcher basis and be included. And that happens all the time.
All right, thank you. I guess one more question for me. So I know that DOE does fund or has a lot of mass spec resources.
Yeah.
Are any of them available to researchers? And can you talk more about kind of what is available?
So we have some you're referring to maybe like proteomics capabilities, like mass spec capabilities for proteomics. The Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory has phenomenal mass spec capabilities, and those are available to users through a user proposal process, and that is open to everybody. And there are other mass spec capabilities at the DOE National Labs, but they're operated more on a collaborative basis with an existing project. The best, probably the best capabilities right now are probably associated with our Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory, and that, like I said, that's open to all researchers to be able to access.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any other questions? If not, we will, oh, somebody's typing something. Give another 30 seconds or so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it looks like that was just a compliment. So with that being said, do you have any last words before signing off?
No, I accepted the invitation because I thought I can't be assured that there are many ASBMB members currently in our program, and I thought this was a new audience that would be interested to see what DOE is doing in the area of bioenergy research and biological research. So with that, I looked at this as an opportunity to kind of reach out to a different research group that may be interested in our programs.
Oh, there's one last question did come through. If you can answer this question, is there a set timeline for FOAs to come out, and when and where to look at the VR website?
Yeah, so there's a kink this year. The two that posted on Monday are way late, and for a variety of reasons that I won't get into, we're late this year. We usually post all of our annual FOAs in the late October, early November timeframe, and we're just now, two of these have just now come out. So there, in those time frames, there's tight deadlines on those FOAs. So, and it's all listed in the FOA. You know, I would encourage folks if you take a look at those timelines, because I think they're going to be a lot shorter this year. We generally, if you look on the Office of Science website under the grants.gov website, there are a variety of annual calls that come out. There's also a standing call for DOE that comes out, and different offices use that standing call in different ways. I can speak for the Office of Biological and Environmental Research, the office that I'm from, in that we prefer to receive research proposals through annual targeted solicitations that come out on an annual basis rather than that open call. Regardless, you should, if you're thinking about submitting a research proposal, please contact the program manager listed on the individual FOA or the contact information for the office that you're considering to submit to, and discuss it before going to the trouble of preparing a larger proposal. Strongly encourage you to contact someone in the office, if not the program manager, and that contact information is available in all of our FOAs. Very important.
And do you anticipate any new FOAs coming out?
Not this year. I'm already nervous about the lateness of the two that posted Monday.
Yeah. So we're looking at maybe October or so in the next few months.
Yeah, the next crop, the new FOAs for fiscal year 20 will come out just after the turn of the fiscal year. I'd say towards the end of October, early November.
Excellent. All right. So again, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Great. Yes, my pleasure.
And to all the participants, thank you for your questions. And this recording will be available hopefully in the next few weeks. And hopefully, Todd, do you think we can send out your PowerPoint slides as well?
Only if I fix the typo in the title.
All right, so we'll give a little bit of time to do that. And we'll send that out fix and all.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you all so much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.